Alright, so welcome back to the channel, and this time we're just going to jump right into it here. So what I have for you today is the Dwaine Carrillo Tunnel Ratt. Now Dwaine, he's gone by Carrillo Designs and Airkat Knives before. If he's used another name before in the past, then I can't keep up with it. Safest bet is to just use the guy's real name, and that's exactly what I did for the title. The other thing is, I've never been able to fully decode the way the guy does his naming. I'm sure there's a method behind the madness, but outside looking in, it just honestly seems like he slaps on a bunch of random numbers and words on for no reason. So at the end of the day, you pull up a page to find one of his knives, and the name is like Airkat Knives SC250 Iron Scout Rhino M5 Magnum or something crazy like that. So you might think I'm exaggerating, but I'm actually not too far from the truth here. I can figure out some of it, but I'm not going to spend the time to research what all of it means. At least in this review, this is just going to be a tunnel rat, plain and simple. Not going to mess with that, and we're going to move right along. We have a lot to talk about today. So in case you haven't seen my other videos, and this channel barely exists, so chances are you haven't, but I'm not exactly new to customs. I've been around for a bit, and I've handled more knives than I can count, so I like to think I have a pretty good understanding about knives. I also know that people like to make fun of overbuilt knives, and I'm not going to pull any punches here. This is a wildly impractical design, but I'm going to try and see if I can do my best to convince you that this is at least intelligently put together. But first things first, like I said, wildly impractical. I mean, it's usable for sure, just not practical for most people to carry. For starters, this is a huge blade, whereas Cold Steel puts it normal sized. But for most people, this thing is absolutely crazy. We're coming in at 9.75 inches overall with a 4.5 inch blade when you measure down here from where the frame ends by the end of the frame. So even when you have this thing closed, it's about 2 inches, it's over 2 inches wide, right where the thumb studs are right here. So you can carry this, and I'm sure some people will, but most aren't even going to try. It carries every bit as big as it looks. So it's not exactly an EDC knife, and I do have some gripes with it, but I'm going to try and see if I can't convince you that this thing isn't just slapped together haphazardly. Before I get into that though, there's a story about this one that I might as well share. So I came at this review about as biased as I possibly could have been. This isn't my first Carrillo, and the U-Bolt Scout I had before was an absolute train wreck. Easily the worst knife I ever bought. So I was expecting something like a crazy overbuilt folder, kind of like this one, but the fancy U-Bolt on the Scout, which was kind of like a modified button lock, yeah, that thing was less secure than a slip joint. So what I got was straight up dangerous, and I should have never left the guy's shop. So a lock would fail with almost just gravity alone. So I was holding the knife in my left hand, I let my arm rest on the side, and the thing just swung shut on me. So this 1/4 inch thick blade hit the joint of my left index right here, about right there, blade first, and that thing was sharp too. It was toothy, but it was very aggressive, kind of like this one. I still have the scar right there, and that one took its sweet time healing. So anyways, after all that, so I was pissed off and disappointed, because these things are well over $1,000. I think it was around 12 or 13, and that one didn't even function. I'm not a rich guy either, so me getting a new expensive knife usually means saving up and letting go of a few that I have lying around. So I was lucky I could have that one returned, and I pretty much did it right away. I swore off Carrillos for good too, at least for a little while, and just a quick PSA to knife makers, you send junk out, it'll come back to bite you one way or another. Word will get out. But anyways, so after a few months, I started to think a bit more clearly. Well, about as clearly as a steel addict can, because I kind of came to a conclusion that I haven't mismanaged my finances enough. So I decided to hunt down another Carrillo. Figured that I might have just gotten a lemon with that first one, you know, sample size of one and all that. So I thought I'd give Carrillo Designs another chance. If that one ended up badly too, well, let's just say this video would have ended up very much differently. Well, it burned a hole in my wallet, but I'm mostly glad that I did actually give it another shot. So I always like to get a few knives from a maker before I really make any blanket statements. So it really lets me see like the real chronic issues with the maker and not just the one-off problems that happen from knife to knife. So for this one, I specifically look for like a frame lock version since I didn't really have much faith in the U-Bolt anymore. And I'll tell you, for the first 2 days I had this one, I didn't trust it at all. I kept thinking that the lock might fail on me, and that early lockup right there didn't really help ease the fear at all. So I was constantly checking it, like grabbing the blade and kind of doing that. My finger's in a safe spot, by the way. and doing light failure tests like tapping the thing against my palm or like things like that. So I wouldn't even handle it normally until I was absolutely sure it wouldn't be a repeat of last time. But anyways, after all that testing, I'm glad to be able to say the lockup is early, but it is rock solid. I can't get this thing to budge at all. There's no play in any direction, no lock slip, no lock rock, no nothing. The thing just doesn't want to move. There's even a bit of lock stick, and that's a good thing in my book. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Lets you know that the lock bar is making good contact with the tang, and it's not going to easily slip on you. So as long as it isn't affecting your ability to unlock the knife, lock stick is a positive to me. Even hearing that small muted pop right there, yeah, it really helped me trust this one. But anyways, I'm starting to get sidetracked right now. It might have gone on a bit too long, but it just wouldn't have been the full story otherwise. But yeah, long story short, this Tunnel Ratt right here won back at least some of the trust that at first Carrillo lost. But anyways, back to a review. So why do I say this is an intelligent design? So actually being able to handle this for some time without fear of losing a few digits, it really helped me notice a few things. Now, this design isn't for everyone. It's pretty obvious, but I can at least appreciate that what is here is well executed. So first up, this is a thick knife. So blade stock is at 1/4 inch. And, let's see. I'll put it up against my Medford Artica right here. And you can see that the Medford, and this Medford right here is the exact same thickness as a Praetorian tie, so try and imagine that. It's also the only knife in my collection that's actually longer than the Tunnel Ratt. So, I guess, size comparison. Yeah, it's hard to see with the angle of the camera, but it is very slightly longer. Anyways, though, like I was saying, back to the thickness. So blade-wise, it's about the same, but when you take the thing overall as a package, the Carrillo is thicker, you can just barely notice it. The gap between the two handle slabs is just slightly wider than even the Medford, and just take a look at how that massive blade is compared to a frame. So with all of that in mind, take a look right here. This guy had the balls to put this thing on standoffs, with that wide space in the middle and that huge blade. So on a lot of other knives out there, and I'm talking about the ones that are just focused on looks, this would be a perfect recipe for a blade that's just basically exposed. You know the ones that I'm talking about, like the mindlessly overbuilt folders out there and about 95% of the Quakens on the market. The ones where you go to pick it up, you grab it by the edge and you feel that edge of the blade right on like the pad of your finger, even though the blade's supposed to be closed. So you don't get that here. So look at this. I'm running my finger all along the back end of the knife, right in the opening. And I have about this much of it in there. I'm not bleeding. I didn't even touch the edge at all. I can't even if I wanted to, and I had the entire fingertip in there. And it's not like you undersized the blade either. There's a good amount of planning that went into this. Like, this kind of thing didn't really just happen by accident. So the other thing is the inside edges of the frame, they're pretty well chamfered too. Like, I was running my finger across that. It's not sharp in the slightest. Both sides have like this sharp 90-degree look to it, but everything's rounded and chamfered. Both the titanium and the G10. That's the other issue you sometimes see. So, yeah, moving back though, so with a blade like that, it's pretty clear he didn't take the easy way out on this one. He literally fit as much blade as he safely could into this handle. And there are 3 standoffs holding this thing together, and all of them are well placed. So the recurve on the blade, that you see right here, it just manages to dodge this standoff up top. And he purposefully put the back standoff right here, close to a point of the blade. So there's no possible way I could get cut if I run my finger along right here. So if you put that standoff elsewhere, there's a good chance I might have been able to touch the point. So it's that kind of thing right there. It's like, that's the kind of thing that I notice and I appreciate. So next up, let's take a look at that clip right there. This is hands down the biggest pocket clip I've seen on any knife. It's straight up bigger than some other knives that I own. And let me see. Yeah. Here it is up against a small Sebenza 21. So you can see that the clip itself is actually bigger than a closed small 21. So that should give you a sense of it. The thing is, this thing actually works, and it works pretty well. Almost everything about it is pretty well thought out when you look a little bit deeper. So it's a very thick bent spring clip, and it's sitting on standoffs, and it has pretty tight tension. But since it's so long, it still pockets relatively easily. Like it has like a longer lever to counteract that high tension. And that huge ramp that you see up front helps you too if you decide to actually pocket this one. So with a ramp that tall, it would normally be a pretty big hotspot, but this clip is so big that it ends up helping the ergonomics instead. So here it is in a normal grip. So I'm not touching that pointed part of the ramp at all. If I choke up, it could be an issue, but even then it mostly lands in an unobtrusive spot. But back here though, the part where it starts to slope up is right where the top of my index knuckle is, and that ramp is almost acting like a guard to keep my hand from slipping up, and it's comfortable too since the thing is so wide right here. So the clip in general just feels like it's a solid part of the frame and hand. It doesn't just fall in an area where it doesn't poke your palm, it basically is part of the handle. So I only have really two complaints about the clip here, and I might as well get those out of the way up front. So neither are all that serious. So number one, I'm just not a big fan of the color on here. The blue and gold stripes don't really go with anything else on the knife. And the finish on the side right here on the top just kind of makes it look a little ugly. So it just kind of seems out of place. I wish he would have kept it somewhat clean like he did on the edges right here. But yeah, I just don't like the look of it. That's mostly subjective. The other thing is, number two, look at that cutout about this area right here, where it's around the place where it makes contact with the frame. So when you're getting this thing out of pocket, it can and will snag the fabric sometimes. So it's just gonna wear out your pocket a little bit faster. Slightly annoying, but it's not a huge problem. I just would have preferred if it wasn't there. And it's not a big deal, mostly because of this. Check out the two screws back here. So if you notice that both of them are completely different. The one up here, where your palm just kind of lands on, about right here. Yeah, that one's domed for comfort, while the one back here is sticking up a lot more. So that's because when you go to grab the knife out of your pocket, either like this or like this, you just naturally wrap your finger around that screw, and it gives you a really good grip to actually pull this thing out of your pocket. Your thumb lands right on this cutout on the other side too, so it's not really going to be going anywhere. So I'll tell you, this grip right here is very secure. So I have two fingers on this, I'm dangling it right here. I'm not even holding it that hard, just light pressure. So I can literally swing this thing above my head in circles and I'll have no fear of it flying out. And trust me, I tried it before, and before I said that, now I'm not going to tell you to go try it yourself, but I will say it's the most convenient way to clear out a lunchroom. Especially if you wave it out too, for full effect. So I'm not sure if it's intentional, and you do have to get it just right, but you can wave this thing open. So those double thumb studs right there are actually wider than the frame itself, so they just naturally catch the side of your pocket. And with practice, you can wave it out somewhat reliably. If you don't want to wave it, you just kind of grab onto a blade as you pull it out, and it's not going to open. But yeah, so these things are pretty oversized. Like from end to end, they're wider than the frame, and it's about like an inch just right here. Even if you don't wave it though, those thumb studs work great for just opening it. You can even flick it open pretty easy too. It works a little bit better when you're not behind a tripod and angled under a camera, but I think I've been doing alright so far. So it's running on some pretty big phosphor bronze washers, and the action is smooth. And you get that constant resistance whenever you're opening or closing it slowly. It's a fitting action for a knife like this. Like, it's not really going to drop shut unless you really give it a shake. And I just don't think a knife like this would feel right on bearings. But yeah, it doesn't matter how you get it open though, you're making a statement each time you take this thing out. It just kind of has that look to it. Just check out how menacing that blade is right there. So it's a kind of knife where you just want to get it in hand and do something really stupid with it. And it'll probably just shrug off the abuse. So the blade stock is 1/4 inch and it's CPM 154. And just look at the weird way that he grinds this one. So he starts with a hollow grind about halfway down the blade. And then by the time he reaches this part, it's still thicker than most other knives out there. And then he transitions that to a flat grind to actually make the edge. If I get the light just right, Not sure I'm going to be able to. But you can kind of see that he does have a micro bevel on there. But anyways, it's a really weird way of doing things, but it does give you a really strong edge. And all the grinds are in this coarse satin too. That it really helps it stand out, and it's the rough kind of satin that you can feel. Let me see if I can get... Yeah, so if you scratch it, you can kind of hear it. So back here, you see this little change in angle right there. I've seen that on all his knives, and I think that's just how he does his plunge grinds. The actual sharp edge starts right about here where that transition is. There's no sharpening choil, but I'm of two minds on that one. I get that it'll be harder to sharpen, but it already has a recurve to it, and, well, there's nothing I hate more than going to cut something and having whatever it is just getting caught on that sharpening choil. So it won't happen on this one. Even if I start right here where it's completely blunt, it'll smoothly slide into the sharpened edge right here, and with that recurve, once it does, it's getting cut. Alright, so moving on. Let's just take a look at that blade shape for a second. Now, I don't know about you, but this thing just kind of has the look and feel of like a mini kukri to me. So you get like this huge recurve right here, and then it just kind of slopes back up a little bit to make the point right there. So a secondary point right here isn't really all that usable. It's sort of there, sort of not there, but so the entire thing just kind of feels more like a normal recurved S-shaped blade. Take a step back, I'm going to put this down right here. You can kind of see that the entire thing just kind of has this arc to it. Like, it's canted forward quite a bit. So if you look at it like this, the point sits well below the center axis of the knife. So instead of being up here, it's all the way down here. Combine that with the arc of the overall thing, and I think it just really helps present the edge towards whatever it is that you're cutting. It gives you a better angle for your wrist in general, especially if you're cutting on a surface or something like that. And it lets you put a lot of pressure behind that point right there, if that's what you're after. The other thing you'll notice is that on the blade there's some milled slots, like right here, and two on the front right here. So the inside of those are left dark and unfinished, and that's where he's lasered in his billboarding, on this knife at least. So I think it's a cool way of doing things. I'm going to try and see if I can angle it so you can see. But, yeah, at some angles the words just kind of blend into the dark background, so you can't always see them easily. So if you're one of those people who don't really like seeing text on the blade, at least for this one, it's at least partially hidden. Look back on the frame and you can see that he kind of mills in a subtle CD right here for Carrillo Designs in that G10 slot, and it's even on the lock bar as well. So it's a nice subtle way of doing your branding right there. And it just kind of blends in because you have this milling pretty much everywhere. Like you see it, like this one's actually full cut out. You see it right here. If you on the other side, you can see it on the lock bar relief cut as well. So moving on though. One thing that I have noticed is that he's selectively chamfering these. So every one that you will normally touch in like a normal grip is chamfered, while the ones up here, they're kind of left at a sharp angle. So I'd normally say that's a negative, but I can't really think of a situation where I would be in contact with those. It's just far enough removed from any grip that I'd normally use that I just don't think it's going to be a problem. While we're talking about that part though, just a little bit of weirdness that I can't really quite understand right here. So this one's this little piece of metal that's sticking up right there, that's actually a continuation of the stop pin. So I have no idea why it's sticking so far out from the show side. But it's well rounded on all sides, so it's not exactly a functional issue, but I just think it's a little bit odd. I can't figure it out, but if the naming scheme has taught me anything, sometimes you just need to give up on stuff like this. Moving back though, the frame's nothing too special. The front side is just a big slab of black G10, but it's well chamfered, there are no corners or anything. The black G10's actually a bit contoured. The titanium lock side has a satin finish to it, and that one's slab-sided, so it's just flat up top. So nothing too special, just kind of pretty standard. So ergonomics in hand are pretty good, but with one huge exception, and it's actually my biggest complaint, this area right here. So just look at how much material he cut out for that lock. So it looks like it's about like half a quarter's worth of G10 missing right here. So you might be thinking that this is for lock bar access, but look at this. This part right here, completely flat. I can unlock the knife using that part right there. That's because there's just so much space in between between the two handle slabs right there. I can just easily get my finger in there. It's actually even harder to unlock the knife too if I press forward towards like the relief cut. So what I'm trying to say is you don't really need all that access to a lock bar. Sure, it helps you unlock the knife right here, but especially with how much space you have in the handle, it's completely unnecessary. What it does do though is in hand, it just kind of leaves this big void right here where you want to grip it. That means you're just kind of grabbing onto a titanium lock bar right here, and it's raised way above this one. So it's well chamfered like the rest of the knife, but you're just kind of concentrating everything right here from your grip onto this part of your finger. So it's just plain uncomfortable, especially if you're really bearing down on it or really like putting some use on it. So what I would say is either cut the titanium down or leave some more G10 up here. If you do a bit of both, you'll even have like a nice finger choil right here. Even if you put one of these diagonal cuts that you see on the G10 on this side on the titanium, I think it would help shave the corner down, because the way it is right now is just plain stupid. You basically have to consciously avoid that area, and it's a shame too, because it's where you naturally want to hold it. So what it means on this knife is the most intuitive grip is the worst one. At least the other ones are better, but so if you choke up, or at least if you move up a little bit, where it's like a bit more even up here, it's a little bit more comfortable, but you still kind of feel that void right there. You choke up right here, and it's pretty comfortable. You have your thumb kind of resting on this sort of ramp right here. The clip is kind of in the way a little bit, but not too much. It's kind of jabbing into right here. But you move up a little bit more and it falls in a void, and the curve on the handle really does help support your palm in the back too. But you can even get up here, and like I said before, the sharpened edge actually starts about right over here. So you're holding on to an unsharpened part right here. So there's no dead space on this knife. You can use every single part of it. So the edge starts right here, and you grab the unsharpened part, and you can get right up next to the edge. In this grip, your thumb just kind of naturally falls into that top notch right there too. Choke back, it's a decent grip as well. Not perfect, but it is decent. The cutout in the G10 is great for grabbing the thing out of your pocket, but not really great for your fingers right here. It's not exactly sharp, but I wish you would have really chamfered it a bit more. Because over here, the tips of your fingers are just kind of searching for a good place to land and not really finding anything. Your index finger is fine because it rests on this part right here where it's cut off, but back here, you're either pressing up against this corner or pulling back against this one right here. So it's a lot better with your thumb up top because it kind of shifts your fingers out of the way, but in a hammer grip, it really does become an issue. So balance is pretty good too. It's about right here where the pivot is, if I can show it. See, about right there. So if you choke back over here, it just kind of feels nice and weighty and really front heavy. So it kind of like going back to what I said before, it just has like the feel of a mini kukri, like it's supposed to be a chopper or something. So I might be insane for liking this thing as much as I do, but it just kind of has that crazy appeal as like, let's say like a Cold Steel XL or something like that. The other thing is I really do see the planning and thought that went into this design, and when you've been collecting for a while, it's the little things that really stand out, and it's the little things that make you really respect the maker. So the entire thing here is absolutely crazy, and on a few levels, it really is absolutely crazy, but almost everything on this is well thought out. Like when you hold it, there's nothing really sharp and jabbing at you. There's no way you can touch the blade when it's closed. Design on that clip it's pretty solid. And like I said before, these things didn't really happen by accident. There are some nice design touches too, like the lock bar relief cut, the chamfering that's done throughout the knife, and even like these little red anodized bits of aluminum that he's using as little pops of color. It's just a nice design touch. So while you might not like the design or the whole overbuiltness of the whole thing, I do find myself respecting the quality of the work here. Like this wasn't something that was just haphazardly slapped together. So I don't know if it earns its $1,000+ price tag, but that's just kind of what the market has settled on. and I guess they're worth what they're readily selling for. Thing to note though, if you're trying to get one for yourself, ask the right questions and buy the seller, not the knife. I've had 2 Carrillos so far, one bad, one good. So I can't really speak too much because either one of these could have just been the exception. The other problem is that Dwaine has had some issues delivering knives lately. You have people that have been on his wait list for some time, so his house was hit by a tornado a few years back and he's had health issues since. I'm pretty sure there's something else happening behind the scene, and I sympathize with that, but he does have outstanding orders that he hasn't delivered on, so I'm not sure if I can send people over there just yet. But yeah, what I mean is, buy already completed knives that you find. I don't know if it's a good idea to get on his books right now. But anyways, I think that's all I have on this one. You really have to be into the overbuilt stuff to get the most out of knives like these, but if you are, you just might like this one. This isn't a design that's for everyone, but I think that's just kind of part of the appeal right here. You pretty much everything on this knife is way over exaggerated. Like if knives were cars, this is like a Hummer with like a heavy duty grill guard or something like that. Some makers go for like refinement or sleek minimal designs. Dwaine Carrillo, I can say, is not one of those. You get this huge blade, you have a huge clip right here, huge thumb studs, and even the detent ball right here is oversized. So this thing just kind of has its own style to it. He doesn't do any fancy polishing or hand satins. The front's just black G10. The satin on the blade is pretty rough. And the hardware just kind of looks mismatched and oversized. The other thing is he just kind of does some random stuff for the hell of it. But I think that's just part of what makes it a Carrillo. And for what it is, it just has soul to it and it is well done overall. So I think I've rambled long enough. I've taken up enough of your time, and thanks if you made it this far. I guess I'll close it up with some close-ups right here. Apologize for a noise in the background if you can hear it. And let's see how far I can take this channel. Take care.